I'm Margaret Braun, and I'm a cake designer, and I work with sugar, and I make cakes and sugar sculptures and sugar objects, and I've been doing it for a really long time. I started as a painter and worked in bakeries because I had to make a living, so I put all of my visual acumen and all of my energy into cakes, and so I discovered food coloring and stopped painting with oil paints and painted with food coloring. So what, are my cakes art? They definitely are. I don't have a very highfalutin feeling about what is fine art. It's in a way, it's a very conventional feeling, because again, there is the subject of technique, which I feel very strongly about. It's very old-fashioned. It's very, a very Renaissance take on making art. Being a workshop, learn how to do something really perfectly. I have a lot of interesting ideas in my head, but it's really weird that I almost think that my ideas are less interesting to me than really making something look beautiful. These cakes are not conceptual. They're not about the mind of, Margaret Braun. They're not my journal writing cakes. Well, whether I like it or not, my work always ends up looking sort of Islamic or 18th century. And I don't do that on purpose. I'm like, oh, I want this to look like an Indian cake. Usually I'll just make something and then someone else will say, wow, that's very mosque-like. And I'll just say, you're right, thank you. It's so important to get really good at one thing and really have it register in your person. Figure out what your taste is and figure out what you don't like. It's always good to figure out what you don't like first. And don't be too overambitious. Don't do, just try and do one or two things at once. I stick to my philosophy until I veer off of my philosophy. A motif is just a fancy word for what that little sugar thing looks like. Is. So there are swags. There's sugar paste roping. There are, polka dots, and there's a pearl border. There's the atomic starburst. There are bows. There are pieces of information that I can stick on the cake in the right place to make it all look good. The atomic starbursts are made with both sugar paste. I roll out the sugar paste and stamp out a little round circle, stick it onto the cake, and then with the pastry bag, I make the little star beams coming off the edges. With the pearl border, I'm just piping it right out of the bag. This is a swag, but some of my cakes, most of my cakes, you'll see they have a swag, but here there's kind of, it stops. You see it just sort of goes like this. This is a new thing. This one instead has a little arc. It's a major development. I'll be doing it for the next 4 years. Technique is how you approach the making of the ornament and motif. I was a painter. I had a studio, and I went to school for a while, but I'm self-taught. I never finished art school, and because I had to work. I think of myself as like the really good BFA painter, with a lot of promise and with very little guidance. I started making paintings, and they were young paintings, and now I paint with food coloring. And I guess really I'm more of a sculptor, and it just occurred to me fairly recently that, because people often ask me, they say, oh, are you ever going to go back to making art? And I realize I'm doing it. I'm making the art. And I don't know if I would go back to painting with oil paints. Like, for instance, I'm working on an illustration project now, and I'm doing the whole thing in food coloring. That's what I know. I paint with food coloring. I'm Margaret Braun, and I'm a cake designer, and I work with sugar, and I make cakes and sugar sculptures and sugar objects, and I've been doing it for a really long time.